Welcome back to another episode of the Aquademia podcast. I'm your host, Justin Grant.
And I'm Maddie Cassidy.
And today we are sitting down with returning guest James Arthur Smith, who is a surfer, yachtsman, and the co-founder of Seatopia. I did mention he is a returning guest. If you go back and visit the Aquademia website, you will notice episode 222, which is labeled Aquaculture Communication in a Niche Market with James Arthur Smith of Seatopia. He goes into great details about his history, how he got to where he is, and spoke a lot about the business Seatopia. I highly recommend that maybe before you listen to this episode, you go back and listen to episode 222 and get some background history that will help you follow along a little bit easier with this episode, which focuses on consumer engagement, all of the great and amazing things that Seatopia is doing to maintain, keep, bring in new consumers into their marketplace. But before we get into that lovely conversation, I want to remind all of you listeners that Aquademia is on Twitter or X, however you prefer to, whatever you prefer to call it.
It's Twitter for us.
Yeah, it's Twitter for us. At Aquademia Pod. Go ahead and find that handle and click that follow button. If you want to contact the podcast for any reason, you can do so by visiting globalseafood.org/podcast.
And if you enjoy this episode and the show as a whole, then be sure to subscribe to us on your podcast platform of choice.
And we will see you at the end.
Welcome to the Aquademia podcast.
Our diet is hurting the environment in myriad ways. I mean, we desperately need to eat more seafood.
This is a pioneering industry with a whole lot of people who have really good ideas and a lot of experience and are unafraid.
Aquademia is your go-to podcast for a fresh take on all things seafood.
James Arthur, thank you for joining us again on the Aquademia podcast. Both Maddie and I are really excited to have you back on and talk about consumer engagement. But before we even get into that, we want to hear a little bit more about you. I want to remind our listeners that back in July 2023, we did an episode with Seatopia. It was episode 222. And if any of our listeners want to get more of James Arthur's background story, a little bit more granular into what Seatopia was doing at the time, please listen to that episode first and then come join us on this episode. But James Arthur, welcome back. Tell us a little bit about your history, how you got to where you are, and then could you give a little short bio or description of what Seatopia is?
Right on. Thank you so much for having me back, Justin, Maddie. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited to share. I don't know how it's been a year, but a lot has happened in the last year. To keep it brief, for your listeners that don't know, I've been working in aquaculture for about 10 years. I started out working at a farm in the Sea of Cortez, and at the time, we had a sort of a existential crisis when we brought the product to market, realized that distributors weren't willing to pay what it actually costs to produce something really innovative. And for the last 4 years, I've been working on Seatopia, which is on the demand side, actually connecting consumers direct to innovative aquaculture products. So, I guess in a nutshell, that's sort of my background. We could talk more later if you want about, my time, many years sailing around the oceans and building other businesses. Right. But Seatopia has been the last 4 years of innovating on the messaging that is connecting consumers to innovative aquaculture products, regenerative aquaculture, trying to build a truly regenerative seafood supply chain, and getting consumers product that is certified clean.
It's really cool that you were on the other side of the experience where you were the producer and looking for that demand. And it's it's really cool to see that you experienced that, and now you've gone on to try to fix that situation that you were in previously. So going off of that, can you catch us up on what Seatopia has been up to in the last year? Because it seems like it's been a crazy year for you guys in the best way.
Yeah. And
I feel like I talked to you guys like 2 months ago. I don't know how it's been a year, but yeah, a lot has happened. On the personal side, I'm like a dad for the second time. So in addition to a growing business, there's just a lot going on. So let's see. Seatopia has been growing. It's through a lot of education, right? It's a long tail investment in getting consumers to apply the same thinking they do to their chicken and their beef to seafood, right? We have, as consumers, started to embrace the idea that there is optionality in beef and chicken, that there is factory farm beef and there's beautiful grass-fed regenerative farmed beef from specific farms that we've come to know and trust. Sort of like not celebrity, but like well-known brands like White Oak Pastures that have been featured on Joe Rogan because the impact they're providing to the environment and the quantifiably more nutrient-dense foods that they're producing. So Seatopia is trying to encourage a deeper questioning of where seafood comes from and what it ate and what it ate. And it seems to be resonating with consumers that, hey, there is a difference between types of farms, types of feed, and farming practices in seafood, just like there is in land-based proteins. And it's a complicated thing with seafood because unlike on land-based agriculture where we don't have commercial wild-caught beef and venison with very few exceptions, it is more complicated because of the sort of tribal infighting and misinformation that gets disseminated about whether wild caught is the best or farm raised is the best and that one is better than the other. It's for consumers, it's a tricky and oftentimes paralyzing decision on what type of seafood to get. So we've just focused on what's certified clean and what does that mean? It means a certificate of analysis that quantifies what's in the fish and can give you insight into what the fish ate and things like heavy metals and microplastics and omega-3s in the form of omega-6s or omega-9s or omega-3s, EPA and DHA. It's all quantifiable in the flesh of the fish, and that is sort of a unique way for a consumer to look at the what do you want to eat? Do you want to eat something that is the best for you, or do you want to eat something that's just affordable? And we're creating a transparency through Seatopia.
How does Seatopia, and you've talked a little bit about this already, but how does Seatopia approach connecting with seafood consumers, especially those who may not regularly consume seafood?
There's a lot. We have this funny internal sort of joke that's going on is that every time we convince a vegan to become a Seatopia customer, we're winning. And it happens pretty regularly. It's a high bar, but how do you do that, right? Like it's, what are the nutritional values that somebody's going to get that justifies them making an exception, right? And those exceptions, are interesting. Like if you're vegan, you're not eating seafood for either ethical reasons or, or you just environmental reasons are a little bit harder to justify, unless they're like afraid of overfishing or, because, preaching to the choir here, but we all know that seafood is one of the most efficient sources of protein. And but the ethical reasons are like, oh, well, I'm concerned about how how these fish were caught or died, and if we can if we can quantify that this is raised in a humane way that was fed a very clean diet and is quantifiably like the sort of nutrients that your doctor is saying that you need, you're probably going to make some exceptions. And then there's another consumer that says, oh, I don't like fish. Fish is fishy, right? We have customers, subscribers, members who come to us and they'll say, my wife or my husband told me they don't like seafood because it's fishy, but now they're eating like all of our Seatopia, right?
Yeah.
And that's because, unfortunately, a lot of people have only had the experience of eating low quality seafood. And that is such a shame. And we are, as an industry, doing a disservice to fish and to our relationship with the ocean and marine resources when we don't handle these fish correctly. Like there's not a fishy smell when you go to the ocean. Fish don't smell fishy when you first harvest them, right? It only becomes this fishy thing, this slimy, fishy fish, because it wasn't handled correctly. So we optimize our sourcing to ensure that there's no fishy fish, right? Like we've been saying we're going to make a t-shirt that says, don't let your friends eat fishy fish. Like, it shouldn't smell fishy. If it smells up your whole house, like it wasn't handled correctly, you didn't slack it out correctly, it wasn't harvested optimally, there's excess lactic acid or too much water, or there's a lot of different things that can go wrong. But if you do it right, it should smell like the ocean. It should taste like the ocean, the miroir of the ocean. And if it smells fishy, like, that's a missed opportunity to inspire somebody to have a relationship with the ocean, to spark memories of their connection to the ocean and the fond smells and memories of being in the ocean. And seafood, when done right, when you eat a beautiful fresh oyster, when you eat sushi grade seafood, it should smell clean like the ocean. And so we don't let anything go into the Seatopia box that doesn't meet that criteria.
The three of us were talking about this before we even pushed record, right? About how important education is. Seafood's already at a disadvantage because there's so many negative things out there around it that it turns people off. But then if you match that with, say, a bad experience that reinforces that potential misconception, then you lose someone else again. And seafood is not as simple. I feel like I'm a robot because I say this almost every episode. Seafood is very, very vast. And so to have that assumption that all seafood is fishy, smells bad, even hard to cook, is not accurate. And I was reading in some of our notes, so maybe you can talk a little bit about this, but it says here that one of the offerings that Seatopia has with your customers is this experience where you offer like one-on-one sessions where people can book a time with a chef and they can walk them through how to cook the seafood. Yeah. Could you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, seafood is different than chicken and beef in that you have these fragile long-chain omega-3 fatty acids that oxidize very easily. And if you're not handling it correctly, it's going to turn fishy, right? So it's important that consumer or customer, a potential future seafood connoisseur, knows how to handle it correctly, right? We spend a lot of time educating people on just how to defrost, right? You can take a beautiful piece of sushi grade seafood and ruin it by defrosting it incorrectly, right? If you take a beautiful piece of sushi grade seafood that's in a vacuum sealed bag and you throw it in your fridge and just let it defrost in its own water for 2 days, it's gonna be fishy because you created a petri dish environment. Like, how do you optimize for the best experience? And that's what we do on these one-on-one calls. Is we schedule time with our customers can schedule time with somebody who's going to explain to them how to handle seafood, how to cook seafood, how to have a great experience. And that's super important. You know, we don't want people cooking fish poorly. We want people to, like, when you have really good quality fish, it's not difficult to make something exceptional. We give you a couple of pointers on, like, use these tools, use this technique, and you will have a home run, happy friends and family dinner party guest every single time. But it's a lot of people are home cooks are intimidated by seafood because they haven't had great quality products in the past, and it got fishy and it stuck to the pan, and their wife didn't like it. They didn't like the skin, they didn't like the bloodline, whatever it is. Addressing it from the start, like these are cuts that your family's going to like, that's going to be approachable to the broadest possible audience, and this is the techniques that you should use, and these are the things you should avoid doing. Makes a big difference. So we schedule these one-on-ones with our customers, or they schedule with us, and we're making brand advocates. And the other great thing is that we can ask them more interesting questions. You know, we have this opportunity to talk to them one-on-one and understand how they're trying to use it, what their objectives were, and how many people they're trying to feed, and what tools and knowledge they currently have, and how do we up-level that? What else do you want? So it's really unique because unlike most seafood brands or distributors or retailers, we are talking to the end customer every single day. We are having these conversations, not just via email, not just via transaction or post-purchase survey. We're literally on the phone talking to them, and we're learning so much about who the customer is, and we are taking the time to educate them.
Right.
When I first heard that Seatopia offers this one-on-one session with every customer, I was blown away. And my first question was, how in the world do you have the time for that? Like, that is just so much of an investment. But it seems like it has really turned out to be a really worthy. What'd you say?
I said it's not really scalable, but we're doing it for now. We'll figure it out. But
it seems like it's been a really worthy investment because you've been so successful, and having repeat customers and subscribers and members, as you were touching on. It's like they might not have done that if you hadn't helped guide them through the process of Seatopia, the experience of Seatopia.
Yeah, it was in response to realizing a lot of people were not ordering again because they didn't know how to use things, right? Like when we would offer somebody collars and they would say, "Oh, I hate collars. Why did you send me these fins?" We asked them, "Well, did you try to cook it, and how did you cook it?" And the techniques they were applying, it's like, no wonder that wouldn't work. You know, like you're going to turn that into mush, or some fish you have to treat differently. You just need the right technique, and simply putting a recipe on the website doesn't always work, right? There's a little bit more hand-holding that's necessary with introducing a new species or a unique cut that can give people a great experience, right? Like I just want people to have a great experience, and it's so disrespectful to the life of that animal if it's not being appreciated by them because we just didn't give them the right tools and information.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think that answers the question, and I'm trying to put where the lens of who will get the most value out of this episode, right? So if there's anyone looking at how to reach consumers, I think the key is, 1, stand behind the product that you're selling them. 2, show them, teach them, educate them so that they can maximize the value of what you're giving them. And you're doing all of those things. And what does all of that mean? If you're educating them, they're having a really great experience. They're going to come back. They're going to tell their friends.
My mind just goes to how, and we were talking about this off mic, and I think it's worth mentioning on the podcast as well, but how and what steps and tools does Seatopia take to ensure transparency, traceability in the supply chain? And how do you then send that message to your consumers and customers?
Transparency is key, right? And we publish the links to BAP, ASC audits. We publish links to certificate of analysis that we do on every batch, every lot that we receive that quantifies to the parts per billion the mercury levels. We started doing some of this testing back in the day when I was working on the farm, just to have internal information about mercury and histamines and whatnot. And as the evolution of the business grew, I realized that this information is also interesting to some of our customers. And then over time, I realized that this is actually some of the most interesting, most important information is how do you quantify the data and transparently make that information available? And having those COAs transparently available for the customers is really empowering customers to know what they're eating and vote with their dollars.
So speaking of, the question was, with the rise of e-commerce, how has Seatopia leveraged digital platforms to reach and engage with a wider audience? But I want you to focus on influencers and talk about maybe some new developments that have happened since the last time we talked.
Yeah. So we've, we launched 4 years ago, and to be totally honest, when Seatopia launched, it was just a sort of an MVP model. It's like we put it out there and we didn't have any marketing budgets. We didn't spend on advertising. We didn't spend $1 on advertising until very recently in I think November was the first time that we spent any money on advertising.
Wow.
Since then, we've been experimenting and increasing it a little bit every month, but we've grown through a lot of our influencer affiliate referrals, recommendations, very organically. We have some cool partners like you guys mentioned that you guys know Veramaris very well.
Right.
Veramaris, for anybody that doesn't know, is producing microalgae from Schizocrichia microalgae that has both EPA and DHA in it, and that's very important for mental health. As Homo sapiens, there's really interesting data about the evolutionary development of our brains and how DHA was critical for the development of the prefrontal cortex, and how early man, moved from Africa, all around the world following the coastline because pregnant mothers were along the shoreline, collecting shellfish and oysters and whatnot. DHA is critical. And when we move away from fish oil to land-based oils like canola oils, you're not getting the same levels of DHA in the seafood. Veramaris producing this microalgae DHA enables the right balances of omega-3s to omega-6s in the seafood. And that's critically important. So we have a differentiated product offering when we work with farms that are using these microalgae oils. And that differentiation resonates with nutritionists and functional medicine doctors and people who understand the importance of DHA and EPA. And so what we've been doing is talking to our network of influencers and asking them to tell us why they appreciate Seatopia. And when they mention EPA and DHA and microalgae, it benefits Veramaris, it benefits the farms, it benefits Seatopia, it benefits the greater audience who are now asking for microalgae seafood. So we're trying to create this sort of ecosystem of partners within the aquaculture ecosystem that are working symbiotically together. Like, how do we catalyze more communication about these important things like microalgae, like astaxanthin, like natural astaxanthin versus synthetic astaxanthin, and get these concepts into the lexicon of the consumer, of the influencers, of the people who are buying. And as they become more educated, we are creating more demand and we're shifting consumer behavior. So we've been working with nutritionists and functional medicine doctors who are very data driven and appreciate what we're doing and are talking about these things in social media. And then to the extent that we can catalyze the distribution of that content into more ads or podcasts or blog posts or editorials, that's kind of a very authentic way for us to grow.
So a lot of our audience, the majority of our audience, is seafood industry people. So people who, like you said earlier, you're preaching to the choir. So the sorts of people that listen to Aquademia are people that would probably want to get involved with a movement like this that is really trying to and succeeding at advancing the seafood industry in a momentous way. So for our listeners that are inspired by the topics that we've addressed today, what is the best way for them to get involved with Seatopia or get in touch with you about helping you further these big issues?
We need better seafood. We need more products that are oftentimes in these pilot phases, right? Like there's how many IMTA, integrated multi-trophic projects have you seen fizzle out after pilot scale? Well, what did they do with those products? Like, did they just give them away? Did they sell them into a commodity supply chain that didn't actually value the unique ecosystem services that was created, or the increased bioavailable nutrition of those fish? Seatopia exists in an interesting model where we can sell limited time offers of small quantity products. We can get them into the hands of influencers who will not only appreciate it and pay for what it costs, but also, publicly write about it, review it, talk about it. So if there's other farmers that have projects that they're interested in having Seatopia talk about, sell, get influencers talking about it, like, please get in touch.
I want to be respectful for your time. I know that we're getting really close to the end, and so I want to give you really the last question. Is there anything else that, while you have the platform, that you want to get out there for our listeners?
I think I already said this, but like, this is like what I'm going to die on. Like, how do we produce the best seafood? And by best, I mean the most nutritionally balanced, nutrient dense, bioavailable seafood. How do we produce that so that as an industry of aquaculture producers, marketers, champions, distributors, to cut through the noise of like, oh, aquaculture is not as good as wild caught or any of those challenges. What is the one product, farm, species that is indisputably amazing and beautiful and delicious and sustainable and regenerative and scalable? Like, let's produce that superfood. Let's do it so well that nobody could say anything negative about it. And I guarantee people want to buy it.
Well, we'll make your website available in the show notes. If there are any of our listeners, I know you're kind of going in that direction earlier, Maddie, but if there's anyone that wants to contact you, is the best place to do that from the website?
Yeah, or on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. We'll link to everything we just talked about in the show notes. And James Arthur, we appreciate you spending a second time here on the Aquademia podcast. Thanks again for joining us.
Of course. Thank you for having me. We're members of the choir. We're all preaching the same story.
Right. Folks, that was our conversation with James Arthur Smith. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I know Maddie and I sure did.
It was really fun to pick his brain and see what he thinks about the greater concept of consumer engagement, because that's something that we hear about and hear people having issues with over and over again in the seafood industry.
And again, if any of our listeners do want to get involved, make sure you go back into our show notes and find the easy ways to connect with Seatopia and with James Arthur. Remember, we are on Twitter or X, handle at Aquademia Pod. Find us, follow us. If you want to contact the podcast for any reason, you can do so with our online form located at globalseafood.org/podcast.
And if you liked this episode, which we really hope you did, then be sure to leave a rating and review on whichever podcast platform you listen to us on, and subscribe so that you can get every episode downloaded to your device.
Ciao.
Bye.